Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below that'll take you to officehours.global, and that's where you can find out more about how to join our little group and how to become one of the producers. Once you end up in Mukana, you'll become one of the producers. Your questions, your votes drive the entire conversation. The first hour is all just general conversation about media and virtual production. So any question there is fair. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we'll be talking about education. As a note, we found that the conversation about education was better when we didn't stream it to YouTube. so we stopped streaming at the end of this hour. This hour runs a little short. It'll stop between 7:45 and 8 o'clock and 7:50. To give educators time to come in and mic check and everything else for their hour. So we'll do that at 8 o'clock, and then next week we'll have a whole new set of these of festivities to have. All right, let's jump into the questions. Courtney, what do we have?
All right, from Carmi Vansvik. Given that we are now 1 day away from a week of after hours being available all the time that office hours is not on, are we now a 24/7 operation?
We are. We are. And I have to say, it's a lot of fun. Like I find it funny to just jump in randomly in the middle of the day or in the evening. And there's like 35, 40, 50 people just hanging out, talking about something that's generally related to media production. I would like, for those of you who are there, if we start varying too far off the conversation, we want to I think all of us as a group, just need to keep pulling it back into something that is remotely geeky. And obviously we want to make sure that as we open this up that we continue to maintain a lot of the rules and process that's been successful. So for those of you jumping in, just note that we want to kind of keep that going there. We're going to get more organized about that over time, but so far when I've jumped in, it seems to be fine. Go ahead, John.
Remember when Perillo used to leave a stream even when he wasn't in a room, and there'd be 2,000-3,000 people in there chatting? It was great.
I think it's going to be similar to that. I think that right now we're at 40, 50 people. I think that there's going to be a point where there's, I don't know how big it'll get, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got up to a couple thousand with maybe 50 or 60 people with their cameras on and just kind of a random conversation going around. Go ahead, Rupert.
Just for anybody that is dropping in, remember that it's not always about what's going on camera. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in the chat, in Mukana. So just always remember to keep those on your radar also. Absolutely.
But yeah, and it's a fun place to share. I almost, I couldn't quite figure out how to share screen and share what I was doing. I was on in Monterey, in Pebble Beach, doing some 3D capture, just for fun. I was supposed to be walking around relaxing. That's not really my MO. So I was capturing this and I was like, oh, I should stream this, but I couldn't figure out how to capture the screen to zoom and do it and do the thing. So that part will work out. But anyway, I was able to jump on and show John Idleson's, Bobby Idleson's car, her FUV, a fun utility vehicle. So we had a good time there. So so we showed what it was like to drive around in it. But hopefully I'm kind of experimenting with that process. This morning I did take that 3D model. I did take the 3D model from what I shot, and we posted it. If you look at the discussion, I think the model's on Discord. But we were talking about how it was captured and what it looked like, and I texted it to Carl to see if we could text it around the world, and that was successful. That was earlier this morning. So it's a fun little process. I think that's going to be something pretty cool. So stay tuned for that. But I would highly recommend jumping into after hours. It's pretty slick. All right. Oh, by the way, as a quick announcement, I did talk about this yesterday, but we did figure out why the webinar stopped working. It has to do with the fact that you can only have 50 webinars at one time. And I had set the start date. I tried to update the end date without updating the start date. Start date was set at June 6th. 50 out is August 25th. So it turns out someone said, well, how many would anyone ever do? Well, I can't imagine them doing more than one a month for a year. I'm sure that was the conversation. So by moving the start date, I was able to do it. And I want to thank the fine people that support that were patient with me. I don't know if they came up with the answer, but they just kept on asking questions until when I was doing a screen capture for them, I was like, oh, right. I know what this is. So, so anyway, tomorrow we will be back in the regular one. So you'll see it come up. You'll get the little update, and then we'll be back on the same rails for at least the next month, before we go into the office hours 2.0. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
From Jason Sipe in Marietta, California, NDI 5.0, 2 weeks in. What are the panel's impressions thus far? And does anyone have any updated tips or tricks?
Ken?
Yeah, just one thing to say about NDI 5.
Have you tried it? Or you just don't like it?
I was on with Marcus in After Hours. He's from Trinidad. And he was using it a lot, and every time he comes on he has to reset. The video was good, but the audio he had problems with each time. So from the experience of others using it, it's so I can't really say myself. I won't use it, so I haven't.
Rupert?
I know there are mixed opinions about it, and we've seen different kind of levels of experience with it, but I know that Andy Carluccio is really waiting on that to get the NDI performance out of the M1 for the Zoom ISO stuff. So it's kind of waiting on that for him.
And we'll be hopefully talking more about that next week. So stay tuned for that. Next question.
Another one from Jason Sipe in Marietta. Disney Plus Premier Access is very explicit about allowing subscribers early access to content, but not to own it. Are we slowly shifting away from being able to own content? What would this mean for smaller local content producers?
Go ahead, Leo.
We moved away a long time ago. You don't own any content anymore. Anything you get on Netflix, anything you get on Amazon Prime, if you've got a Kindle, the list goes on and on. You do not own that content. Even when it says you are buying it to download it, you are not buying it, you are renting it. And this has been an issue that a lot of people have not realized, that they aren't buying. It says buy, and you assume that you're buying, but you are not buying anymore. You are renting.
Go ahead, DJ.
I think the subscriber, the change to subscribing to get everything for a monthly fee, even software nowadays with like Photoshop and whatnot, has really changed the whole way people think about ownership on anything. I'm one of these Luddites who still buy plastic discs for all their movies. That way, when the internet is broken, I can at least still watch my movies.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Just to extend on Leo's point, I mean, that may be true, but also we've had the rental thing online for quite some time. You get your included content with your subscription, but there's been rental options over and above that for a long time.
But change your credit card number for Apple TV and see how much content you actually own. I had to change. I had to change it a couple months ago, and just in that moment, it's not like, oh, you can't buy anything new from Apple TV. It is, you can't access any of your content at all until we get caught up. Because it had charged some $14.99 or whatever, and suddenly 600 movies are not available. Go ahead, Courtney.
And the reason they make that distinction is they're actually in the middle of a giant lawsuit now at Scarlett Johansson over this, is that that particular application where they put first-run movies on the same day and date, release them for the plus streaming where you got to pay $30, and that $30 for that particular movie will only let you view it for, I think, 48 hours, and then it disappears. So they're going to have to redo all their contracts to include that first showing over that first streaming plus content that's the additional charge in the box office receipts, because most stars have their back-end deals tied to box office percentages.
And I don't think that people were clear that the movie was going to go away when they bought it, when they paid $30. That model is going to die so quickly. It is because the backlog. I've already had some folks that on some other services have done that, where you can get the first one for $30 and they go, oh, I'm going to go do it. They thought that they bought perpetual licenses to that for $30 because it's already way more expensive than they would buy it from Apple TV 3 months from now. And that model is going to burn up in the atmosphere. It is people are not going to do that. They're just going to, oh, I can wait. There's the problem that Hollywood has right now with movie releases is that we are awash of content, and I can easily wait for most content for it to just come out wherever it's going to come out and not pay something that I'm only going to get for 48, a rental for 48, 48 hours for it. It's, it's just Hollywood trying to squeeze this out, and it's just not going to work. Like it's, that's not viable. Go ahead, Leo.
I think what's going to be really interesting, and it will come up, is when people bequeath things in their wills, and they'll suddenly find that what they thought they could hand over, there is nothing to give. There is nothing to hand over, to pass on. You can't do that anymore with a lot of this stuff. It's like when the owner of that thing stops, I think it's going to just stop, and that's going to catch people out. Unlike the stuff that TJ's got, he's physically got it. The rest of us on your Apple contract of your audio or your video contract just going to disappear.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people still buy DVDs, because even though they don't own the content, they don't have the right to reproduce it, but they can watch it for eternity as long as their DVD player holds out.
Right. You go ahead, Mark.
I seem to remember Bruce Willis having a lawsuit with Apple over trying to leave his music content to one of his daughters, one of his kids. And I think you just have the right to watch or listen to the music. You don't own it.
Yeah. I know that I don't do this because I'm just too lazy, but to own it just means that you need an HDMI to SDI, a cheap HDMI to SDI from China. You just play it through to a recorder. Then you own it. You don't own it legally, but it's now part of your permanent collection. I don't do it because the main reason I buy I buy a couple movies, a movie a week probably, is that I want the features. I want the extra features, and would be too trivial. It would be too difficult for me to do anything with. And so I don't bother to, I'm not interested in it. I did in the past. I used to have I think it was 6 discs or 8 discs at a time from Netflix back in the day. And I had a Mac Mini that was dedicated to just ripping them. So literally I would drop them in and hit go. And as soon as they were done ripping, I would just send them back and it was because I kept on losing the Netflix discs. And so what I would do is I would just watch them later and then delete them. I just was time shifting everything, but I got it into a machine, and then I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that I hadn't watched. I just was like, I might want to watch that someday. And anyway, I stopped doing that just because it's just too much trouble and just too much time. And the Apple TV thing became easy enough for me to do. But I really found that what I really missed was features. I want to see how they made it. I want to watch the commentaries. I want to get all the other things out of it. And I think that for almost everybody, that's a missed opportunity by most of the services, is not understanding that, like, literally I feel like they grow these cows, we'll just call them cows, that we call films, and then they sell the skin, and then they throw everything else away. And you're kind of like, there's a whole lot of data there. There's a whole lot of content. There's a whole lot of things that could, especially now that you have a subscription service, that you could put in 20, 30, 40 hours of content that is relatively inexpensive to make, that would just keep subscribers connected to it and more likely to watch it. And but that's the main reason I buy it. If I buy something without a feature, I literally look at who made it and go, I'm not buying their movies anymore. Like if they're cheap, like I look for the features to buy the film. I won't buy a film that doesn't have features. Go ahead, TJ.
For the early access thing, depending on your family, it might, $15 or $30 rather to see a movie, premiere weekend or early, might be a financial boon for you if you've got a few kids and going out to the movie and popcorn and everything. That's $100 possibly just to go take the whole family to a movie. Where if you're like me, I got a nice home theater, I got popcorn that I can pop in my Whirly Pop, so I don't have to spend the money for that. So
it definitely is, and we do it occasionally, but it's when I realized we were doing it and we weren't. I thought we were paying $30 and getting to keep the movie. Like, I'm buying early, and I'm paying $30, $10 extra in my eyes. I'm paying $10 extra to get it early. That was fine. Paying $30 and not ending up with it, not fine. Like, I was just like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, I'm just, as a consumer, I was like, I vote against that ever turning into a business model. And as a result, and if I buy, it will only encourage them. So literally it's for me, it's just like, I'm not going to do that, So next question.
Okay, from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Will outdoor amphitheater type venues be ideally suited for hybrid events?
Sure. Go ahead, Courtney.
I would say not ideally suited because you have weather, outside of California, and maybe Dallas has a lot of weather. And if you're going to put up a big screen to include a bunch of people from remote or audience members or somebody to make a hybrid event, you got to weatherproof it. And there was that big screen that was outdoors. Where was it, in Dallas? No, it was in Texas somewhere, that collapsed because of a windstorm came up. So, the technology involved in doing a hybrid event is much more vulnerable in the real world outside of the indoor facility.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So I asked this question because I saw a venue on a recent trip that I just wondered how they are going to sort of pivot or what they're going to do. It's this place here. They've got a covered up facility, and then the auditorium, I guess, or where the crowd would be, is on a embankment that they've built. And while I was there, I was just trying to visualize where they're going to go.
Yeah, Schy.
Well, Courtney reminded me that at the Atrium Museum right there at Griffith Park, they would do a summer theatrical, and they would put up a big giant screen and multiple projections, multiple audio systems. So as a community, it has been done in the past. So maybe possibly there.
I think there's still enough people out there that want to do what they want to do, that this is going to be success. You can, when COVID ends, whenever that is, you'll end up with people who want to, go back and congregate in large numbers. And there's a power to it. When you get thousands of people all in the same place, there's a feel to it that you don't get any other place to do that. So there's an opportunity for these venues. Whether there's an opportunity, whether they are the big game anymore, I'm not clear of. I think that, the math that we're doing as we do R&D around doing events for projecting to other venues as well as to other individuals all at the same time, with all of them paying a lower number than they were going to pay, but much easier and more accessible to them. The ROI is so high that once people get good at this, I don't think that nothing's going away. Like, we still have radio, we still have newspapers, we still have, kind of newspapers. We have theater, we have a lot of things that were around forever. Things don't go away, but what is considered the big game is probably not going to be a concert tour. It's probably going to be the online, the handful, like you'll have a band that tours X number of cities live in stadiums and everything else. But where they cash in on the tour is going to be at a theater that's designed for them to do that, projecting out to other theaters most likely, and to individuals, and who are all paying, and they'll make $200 million in a night, and they'll a big really big band. There's only a handful of bands that are super bands anymore, but one of those bands, like if ABBA came back and said, we're doing a virtual whatever, and you can all go to AMC theaters and watch it. There's a lot of people that would do that. Like, they turn it into a big party, and they would, and ABBA would probably make, another billion, in a very short order. So they, that's the kind of thing that I think, but again, they won't have to tour. They don't have to deal with all the infrastructure, logistics, all the things that are around that. And that's what's going to turn, I think. Next question.
Also from Rupert McRae in Dallas, could the panel recommend any super flexible yet tough long Ethernet cables of the type that would match the flexibility and good quality SDI cables or audio cables? Does one need to go to Ethercon cables for this application, or maybe the connectors he's talking about?
Go ahead, Leo.
So I wouldn't go to Ethercon unless you actually have it, because Ethercon restricts what you can actually do on the end, because the barrel doesn't fit over most of the Cat6 things. And the other thing is, with Cat6, you've either got solid or stranded. Solid is stronger in a way, but it is definitely not flexible. So if you want anything where you want to roll it up on a regular basis, you need to get stranded cable. Also, bear in mind with Cat6, you've got a plastic, like a square, I can't think what's the right word for it, in the middle. So that actually makes it quite rigid, or more rigid than ordinary cables. There are quite a lot actually of stranded Cat6, but typically when you find Cat6, it's solid, not stranded. And that's maybe where you're having the issues.
Go ahead, DJ.
Monoprice. All my cables are now monoprice for Ethernet.
Go ahead, Jason.
For long distances, we've used the Game Changer cable. It allows us to get about 600 feet at 1 gig speeds. So if you're looking for long, good cable like that, the Game Changer cable has worked for us.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael. I was watching a behind-the-scenes documentary from the Westminster Kennel Club dog show in New York City, and the announcer mentioned a robotic camera on the floor. Would a PTZOptics camera be an example of said camera, and how would it be controlled?
Not 100% sure, but I'm almost positive that they use telemetrics heads. Telemetrics heads with broadcast cameras. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, when the dogs make the runway down, they actually run the dogs in a solid line. There's a camera mounted on a little, robotic. That's when they robotic, it usually means it's mounted on something that moves.
Yep. But they have a couple of them on the ground there that at least at one point were telemetrics heads that weren't moving, but they were rotating around. And then to Roscoe's point, a lot of people use, especially like if you saw even in some of the gymnastic stuff, they have them on rails that are running along with them to go down that path. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you watch any of the Olympics coverage, you'll see in the background, especially along the track and field or rowing, you'll see a camera moving with the competitors. And yeah, it really does make it a compelling shot.
Yeah. Next question.
From Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, I think. I know office hour community uses primarily mixed pre's. I am using the Zoom H6 recorder as my interface. Has anyone else used this device with a mic?
Go ahead, Chad.
I started using my H6 with my DPA. There's always a little low-level noise in the background, and the more I had to bring the gain up, the more that noise would intrude. Spent some time with Mickey. Turned out if I was going to use the H6, I would need to come in without original sound. And that's why I ended up upgrading to the mixed pre. But it's a great recorder. It's a great interface as long as you can do something to tamp down the noise.
Next question.
From Leo Mendel in Penner, UK. If Schy had invited us to his barbecue, what would he like us to bring? Cable making equipment? Is that on the list? Is not on the list.
I have a milk box full of cables down here. So I heard the Olympic challenge was going to be who can coil a cable and then throw it back out in one throw. And so I think we're gonna have it between 1 and 4 o'clock, overcast.
So I think I just added this thing to it that the Olympic cable rolling should be that you have to roll it. It has to be at a certain size. Like you have to hit it. It's like how you get measured is like how constant it looks. And then you throw it, but it's not just that you throw it. It can't tangle, but you throw it out and it has to hit a target. Like it's 15 feet. You have to hit the target with the thing.
And to TJ's point, this is sponsored by Monoprice.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
So what Schy has in his hand there, and what we were just talking about throwing cables, is exactly what I had in mind for an Ethernet cable. That's the kind of cable I'm looking for, like that flexible, easy to wrap cable. But
it looks like it was very easy to wrap, as you can see, because it's wrapped so cleanly.
That was how not to wrap cable.
I didn't say I was going to be a contestant. I'm the host. Hey, come on.
Go ahead, John.
Alex, you just blew my 100 diameter loop idea.
Exactly. All right, next question.
From Jason Sipe and Murrieta. During the pre-show, a discussion of proper framing occurred amongst the panelists. What are the panelists' opinions about properly framing a talking head? Should the eyes, nose, or mouth be considered exact center framed, and why?
Go ahead, TJ.
Generally, when you're framing a talking head, you're going to use super sources or mortises or some other thing where you're going to take bits of those and put 4 or 5 people together. So generally, you want your subject to be centered in the frame so that as you're bringing all those other sources in, you just crop out the center of each frame and don't have to get fancy about, oh, I got to get the right side of this frame and the left side of that frame. It just makes life a lot easier if you are centered. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing from a compositional standpoint, but it's the most practical.
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
It depends on if the audience knows who the individual is talking to. In film, we put people on the third so that each person occupies a third of the film. So when we know exactly the position of each head on that screen, and they cannot violate and suddenly change sides. So we establish a thing called a vector line. It's a whole long discussion. But so if we know that they're talking as we are right now directly into a camera, great, center them and have them look right into the camera. But if the audience knows someone else is being talked to, then oftentimes we set them off on thirds.
And Rupert showed a graph. Where did that come from? And your nose is right in the middle.
It's just something I made up when I was playing with my angles here and my alignment. This isn't anything. I didn't know that it meets anybody else's standard. It's just something I put together to help me.
That's great.
It does draw attention to your nose, though. Yeah.
It's like, look, let's everyone look at it. I think we all just leave it on there. But that'll be the new camera check. Is we'll pop that up. Go ahead, TJ.
One other thing is for people when they're trying to position themselves in the frame, generally a good accepted rule is to put the eyes at 1/3 of the way down from the top of the screen. And if you look at a lot of TV shows and movies and stuff, generally the eyes are always at like that 1/3 mark.
Go ahead, Chad. And then Jason.
I was going to say exactly what TJ said. I break it into thirds and I put the eyes right here, just about at any zoom level.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was asking that question because when Rupert put up his overlay, it's really interesting because you can see the nose is really his centered point, whereas some people have the mouth as center point and some people have the eyes as centered point. So I didn't know if like panelists had differing opinions on why to use one or the other. Typically here we'll put the mouth there because we have lower thirds that go down below, so everyone ends up centered frame if you're not looking at the lower thirds. But I just thought that was really interesting because you guys were having that discussion back and forth.
Ken?
Yeah, I think a key point is because it's related to Tony and the conversations with Tony show, is that his eyes, like I'm doing myself now, is looking directly into the camera for that engagement. Because when he does that, it's so much more powerful in terms of getting your message across when you're looking kind of directly into the lens. So agreed about the kind of the framing part, but I think, you know, looking directly into the camera, if you're talking to someone, if you want to get your message across, that's really powerful. Like, do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Now, we've talked about it before that this actually the language may be changing because of Zoom, because the audience can now be put between the two people speaking and looking into the eyes of both of those individuals. So it does possibly the language will change what people expect when.
Yeah, and one of the things is that we don't really like. There used to be this thing where people would look off like this because they're getting interviewed, and you do them, and that is. Like, it just feels old every time I see it now. Like, we just don't do that anymore, you know, because the Interrotron ideal has become normal. Now, when I'm trying to frame someone, at least to start, what I want to see is the end. I want to look at the end of the slope of their shoulders. So I'm trying to get around that. This isn't quite the end, but it's pretty close to the end of the slope of the shoulders. And then I want my head to be almost at the top. Now, we used to have, you know, we used to do things that we called 10% in was action safe. So we would try to keep it inside of action safe. And then you had title safe that would come in like this. And what happened is when you use these guides, you ended up framing the person much in the center of the frame, but we don't do that anymore. I mean, YouTube has basically made it, the YouTubers have made it more acceptable to get closer and closer to the top of the frame, to the point where people look really short if they frame old broadcast. So I think that the newer broadcast of it is to capture that, because if it gets any closer than that, you do have to leave some space. Now, one of the things that Alex Gollner and I were talking about is that the BBC has just moved away from all of this, and they simply put it up over here, you know, and that way they don't have to worry about lower. That's kind of the most modern way to approach it, is to tag people from the side to make that work. And that's probably where we're going with that. I'm going to move on because we're running out of time for the first hour. Next question.
Okay, from Tim McCullough, Wichita, Kansas. With Sound Devices waiting on chips to resume production, would a Zoom F6 be a reasonable substitute until Sound Devices products are back? My field recording needs are few and simple.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Well, Tony's using it now. The only thing, as Chad pointed out, the preamps aren't as good, so you'll have more self noise, especially if you're using low output dynamic mics. If you're using condenser mics, it should work equally well as most, even the sound devices. You may not hear too much difference. Plus, the number of features that you have on the F6 with the auto mix and also streaming and powering, 3 different forms of powering. It's a very good choice.
Yeah, I think
low budget as a low budget.
I think you definitely want to look at what the gain is that's required. If it's above 40, you're probably going to have trouble, with the F6. Next question.
From Tony Mobley and Noonan. After hours follow-up question: should I use AirPods or something more discreet for CWTM?
So I would recommend some version of an IFB. So the auto, I'm actually using an auto today because I had some problems with my other one. And so this is an auto here. It's I can't hear you now. So, but it's relatively inexpensive, 40, 45 bucks, something like that. And it's comfortable and it pops in and it's relatively low impact. So that's the one that I would recommend. Next question.
Okay. Also from Tony Mobley. I need help with the pop filter. I got one from BSW. It doesn't fit. Cannot find the right one on that site. Suggestions, please. And he has that PR40 he's looking for.
Alex, you're muted.
Go ahead, TJ.
If you got that, this pop filter I have and the one that Alex has looks like the one that Broadcast Supply Worldwide does make. If you're having problems getting it to fit, if it's this specific pop filter, hit me up in Discord. I can walk you through getting it mounted properly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Schy.
Monoprice has a generic one. It's big, it's ugly, it's not as pretty as what you're looking for, but
there is a specific one that is built for it. And if you're having trouble with let me see, I'm just trying to,
and Roscoe shook his head.
I mean, there's one that they make one for the PR40. So if you're using a PR40, it should, if you search PR40 pop filter in BSW and you ordered that one, you may have you can't slide it over and you may be trying to attach it to the wrong place. So remember that you can't attach it to the body. You're attaching it just short of the body, over top, actually over. That's probably what's going on. I've done that myself. You're attaching it right at the base of where the mic is, not where the grill is. So not around the actual body, and it won't fit around the body. It will fit around the grill area. So I think that may be the issue that you have. Next question.
From Leo Mendel in Penner, UK. As Sunday is normally more relaxed, any suggestions to bring some more of the after hours crew into the conversation? No mic checks and iPads allowed? ?
We still want to be easy to listen to. so we'd still prefer people to be, like the after hours is for folks who are just, that are going to have rougher audio. So, I mean, I think that even then I would prefer people to have, relatively good audio for the office hours time frame in that area. Go ahead, Rupert.
I think Sunday's a good stepping stone for people who want to come into the regular show. So if we keep it sort of more like the regular show, then it provides that transition.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of view the process of people on after hours just enjoying being part of the community. If they decide they want to do more than that and they want to eventually end up in the office hours, the weekend hours are the ones to jump into. So the Saturday and Sundays, because we're going to be much more relaxed about it, but we still would prefer people to have mics and preferably in ear monitors, when they get into the office hours area, because there's just a lot more people that are watching. And it's when you have the headphones on and someone jumps in without managed audio, given how used to it we are at having it, so it hurts. And so it's really like you're playing a bigger game when you jump into office hours versus after hours. After hours is a great place for all of us to hang out, but we all know to kind of probably keep it on open speakers and not have headphones and not have to not do those things because it's a little more rough. And that's the idea, is that it's going to be a little less structured. Next question is from Rupert McCrae. Oh, sorry, I jumped into Sunday mode. Go ahead, Courtney.
That's all right. Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas says servers and Mini-PCs are often built into mobile setups and laptops are used by the crew, but when are tower desktop PCs or Macs used in on-site setups?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Come on, click. I was just going to say probably the only reason to use it is because you have to put video cards or additional, hardware into it to interface to digital I/O, something like that, which you can't really do easily on a laptop or small PCs. Or if you need the rendering power of a beefier PC with more cores and multiple video cards.
We go Jason and then Mark.
Anytime we do anything graphics wise or we need a media server, we use towers instead of using a Mac Mini or a laptop.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, the towers handle the software switchers better, and they just allow for more cooling when you put a bigger graphics card in there.
And they can also be, especially when you start getting to 5U, 4U, 5U, they can be a lot quieter because the fan systems are managed. So we have elementals, for instance, that we used to joke are like jet engines, but there was an elemental that was built a long time ago that was 5U in an HP Z800 that made no sound and still was a really great encoder. They are collector's items now, so you'll see one in my thing later. But they were amazing. Go ahead, Leo.
In houses of worship, I would say that tower PCs are much better because it's a permanent setup.
And a lot of times we rack them. For us, we've had ones where we're stitching live, for instance, stitching 360 live, and those will be four GPUs, like really high-end GPUs, all in one box that are all ready to go. And that's the kind of thing that we couldn't put into a laptop. Next question.
Okay, from Rupert McRae in Dallas. Web tracking cookies may be fading away, but is that because they are being replaced by far more sophisticated web tracking technologies?
Go ahead, Ken.
I don't think they're fading away. The usefulness of them within the Mac environment will soon be fading away with the upgrade of the operating system to totally anonymize your IP addresses. They are key for Google. That's why they have such a brilliant web analytics tool for free, is based upon those cookies and the tracking that they give you. But there are better ways of, well, not necessarily better ways, but there are ways of doing it without tracking. Though they aren't as sophisticated as what Google can do, because they spend a lot of money and they do a really good job.
Go ahead, Rupert.
That was kind of my reason for asking, because I've attended a couple of the Google Analytics events recently here in the past couple of months, and they clearly are thinking beyond cookies. They know that people are getting kind of tired of them and they're coming up with some new stuff. I just don't know what it is.
Go ahead, Leo.
There's due to be a major change that all of that is going out of the website and into the browser. So the browser will take over some of your controls, so you actually do the selection there. There is a long way to go. And at the end of the day, website owners need to, or part of how they can generate money is knowing who's visiting, or at least, as Ken would say, anonymizing the visitors so they can reply to advertisers.
Go ahead, TJ.
Google is eliminating support for third-party cookies, which disables the ability for some people to track, but they are also implementing their own way to be able to track with the FLOC, the Federated something of collection. Anyway, it's sort of them driving the whole thing. They're getting rid of one thing, but they're putting something else in its place.
Fundamentally, tracking has built a transactional relationship between the people making the content and the people reading the content, and it's dehumanizing. And so the thing is that it will eventually it's going to go away. Like it is like we'll keep on. It's not going to go away tomorrow, but especially when you have a company that like Apple, who doesn't have a business model around advertising, they're just going to keep turning the dial. Like they're just going to keep they could turn all of it on right now, but people would go so crazy. You can see how people got upset when they said they're going to turn some of the tracking off. So Apple's just slowly cooking this frog. and in the, every update, you're just going to slowly see the water just get tighter, hotter and hotter and hotter and harder and harder and harder for people to do it. Because partially is the average user doesn't want to have that. It's weird and gross when you go buy something on Amazon and then see it everywhere all the time. It just makes you feel like someone's walking behind you all the time and then throwing things in that you already bought. And so the thing is that the, and people don't like it, they just don't like feeling like that. And so fundamentally people don't like to do that. And the cost of that will be that people will pay subscriptions. That's what we're doing now. People are paying subscriptions to opt out. The reason that this is such a problem for advertisers is the people with the most money who are most likely to buy things are basically paying to not see their ads, and so it's taking this huge chunk of the market just out of the system constantly. And yes, it will make ads less expensive, less effective, because it'll absolutely make them less effective and harder for businesses and small businesses and big businesses and everything else. But the average user wants out, and you can't build a system that people want out and expect it to work forever. TJ?
Just to let people know, all web cookies are not evil. Most of them are actually beneficial, gets you your shopping cart, keeps your logged in state to the website. It's just the ones that are third party that are tracking you, like Facebook or Amazon, site to site to site to site.
And you definitely want to get into the habit of every website that opens up about cookies, I just go, no. Everything that I'm allowed to turn off, I turn off, and then I hit go. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's a recent change in the law, privacy laws that concern now you have to, most people have to opt in to accept cookies. So that's why you get that annoying pop-up now that says this site, you have to accept cookies or not accept cookies. And there's probably 7 pages you'd have to read to before you click on accept or not accept if you were informed. And so I think it's going to force people just to turn them off or move away from cookies because they don't want to be annoyed to satisfy the law.
Right, Leo.
You can see that it's becoming more and more, when something gets squeezed like it is, you can see it becomes more and more evasive in other areas. So Virgin Media, who are a cable provider here now, every time you turn on your Virgin Media box, it's now sending you adverts because they're losing ad revenues in other areas. Someone like TeamViewer, every time you finish a TeamViewer session, they're sending you an advert. And it's because everything is losing traction. And so they're like gasping for the last gasp of air and moving you in another direction. And I think it's just going to evolve and burn out.
And I think that the issue is that what we're experimenting with here is a potential future for that, which is to build communities around your brand that you actually are providing service to. And if you took the money, I don't know what the money is now, but I can tell you 10 years ago, this is 10 years ago, Chevy was paying $350 million a year just for online advertising. If they took $350 million a year and produced content about cars, about driving, about things, and generated revenue and generated community with it, I could do a lot with $350. I don't know what Chevy can do with $350 million. I could do a lot. I could get people to think that the only thing they could possibly have is Chevy. Because you do great things and you do cool things and you do, and you connect with people. And that was just their online advertising budget, not the one that they're, and the problem is this is happening in all advertising, is that people don't want to see it anymore, and because they have access to lots of content. Before, we didn't have access to that content. Now we have access to tons of content without advertising. And, you're just done. Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I mean, you've only got to look at in our own area, people like Restream, StreamYard, a number of these companies that are producing their own programs every single week, covering different subjects, which are not necessarily their subject, but they're going around it and they're talking about it, and they're getting eyeballs that way, and they're selling their products off the back of that. And I think that is definitely the way to go forward. And just before I finish on this, a good example really is how somebody here deals with working with other communities and using and providing products so those communities can grow, and that must help their business.
Let's jump to the next question.
Okay, no. From Douglas Carmichael, why would Taiwan hold so much of the world's chip manufacturing capacity?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Pure play and dedicated foundries. Pure play means that they don't do a lot of designs of their own, and dedicated means when they do one for you, they don't sell it to your competition. They are dedicated to making just things for you. They started back in the 80s, late 80s, they started doing this, and they've just they are the place.
The hard part is once you get to a certain level, you have the people, you have the expertise, you have the infrastructure, and so what happens is it becomes something that's very hard to reproduce somewhere else, because like, how do you get all of the technicians and all of the people that know how to do this and all the things that are there? And that's why you see these things like where all the hard drives, I think, are made in like Thailand or something like that, like all the core of them in and all of the things. Now, companies are trying to do that, but getting that skill set, that infrastructure, the entire economy that's required is extremely difficult. And that's why Shenzhen is so powerful. It's not because of Foxconn, it is because of all the little companies that are around Foxconn that support Foxconn to do that. And that makes it very, very hard to move out of a specific location. Next question.
From Rupert McRae in Dallas, could tip ring sleeve cable, otherwise used for stereo, be used for a mono earpiece in one direction and a mono microphone in the other by using a breakout adapters at either end, much like a TRRS, a tip ring sleeve headset, but just mono?
Yeah, I think that's actually how the boom mic, if you look at the boom, just search the boom mic, I believe that's actually how their system works to do that. So yes, it's totally possible. Next question.
Okay, from Douglas Carmichael, do you think that software-based modular audio mixing solutions like the Waves eMotion LV1 have a potential to disrupt the console market if the right mix of features and capabilities are available?
I don't think it's features and capabilities that are Waves' problem. It's stability. It's not like they have to figure out stability. Waves has to figure out stability. I have never had Waves in a venue not crash or not do something completely unexpected, ever. So and that's why people don't want their console back. It's the problem with software versus FPGA or software versus silicon. The software can do a lot more, but it's also a lot more volatile. That's the problem that Waves has, is that the hardware that they sit on and the software that they sit on is far more volatile than a hard chip. It makes them more flexible. It gives you the opportunity to do incredible things. And I think Waves in a studio environment with someone who knows how to do it is extremely powerful. I can't talk about where I've seen that, but I've seen it in some pretty big studios where people are, radio studios, that people are doing great things with it. But I think that the problem with it is that when you take it out on the road, literally, we've lost a couple hours every single time when someone brought a vendor in with Waves, and at some point things stop working, and then we have to spend like an hour or two waiting for them to figure out what the heck happened. So that's the challenge. Next question.
From Mike Beardmore in Reading, UK. Any suggestions for creating an augmented reality effect over an art installation with a simple utility? SparkAR has been suggested, but is dependent on Facebook. I used BeyondAR previously.
I think the question is whether you want to make it cross-platform or not. The most advanced AR tools right now are on iOS. So that's the challenge, is Apple makes it really easy. They've got a whole bunch of libraries that they just hand you that'll work across lots of apps. If you're not going to use the Apple one, Facebook is definitely the most advanced that's going to be cross-platform, as far as what they're working on. And that just has to do with how dedicated they are to building those libraries for you. So you're stuck between those two at the moment, in my opinion. If you want to do something that's there, if you only want to, that's a challenge right now. Targeting both Android and Apple and having it work and having it be easy. I haven't seen anybody do without having to write their own processing to make that work. I think that there's a potential to do it with Unreal and Unity, where you'd get into be able to serve both markets. I just haven't seen it done very successfully yet. And it's just more work to do that, but it's definitely doable. So I would be looking at Unreal and Unity. This is an area, Unreal gives you more features, and there's more feature sets to work on it. Unity is actually built a little bit more towards this. So there's a mixture of the two, and you have to decide which one makes the most sense for you. Next question.
Okay, from Peter Rosato, maybe our last question for this section. It's a non-tech question. Received my sampler pack. Best way to make Amish popcorn.
This is very important. We should probably do an after hours. I'll make some popcorn and we'll film the whole thing in after hours. Go ahead, TJ.
I would recommend using one of these. It's a Whirly Pop stainless steel version. Since you can't get the Lindy popper anymore, they don't make that. The Whirly Pop is a great alternative. The stainless steel one is much easier to clean than the aluminum one. I know I have both.
And does the stainless steel one have a thicker? Does it have a thick bottom to it?
It does. It has about it's like a 1/2 inch thick aluminum clad plate to the bottom of it. Because
that's
you
kind
need
of the key to the operation. The original Lindy Pop, which the Lindy Pop was the original like Whirly Pop, or not? No, I'm sorry. The Whirly Pop was the original Whirly Pop. Lindy Pop was, I think, they might have gotten sued out of it or something because they actually produced a much better. I have a Lindy Pop. It's thicker metal and it's got a nice thick bottom to it, like the 3/4 inch, base to it. But they stopped making them for some reason. So the bigger Whirly Pop but the original Whirly Pop had like literally the base was the same thickness as the side, and what that means by not having that thick plate is that you get much more spotty. It's a spotty heat distribution. So the thicker the plate at the bottom, the more even the distribution is, and maybe I measure it with a laser measure. So anyway, laser thermometer, and so you want that. The big thing is to heat it over low heat so that you get even distribution. You don't want more than 20 degrees from the center to the corner. You can 30, 35 maybe, but no more than that. And so if you want to have it on a larger, mine's like the halogen burner, but you set it down and you can heat it slowly so it heats the entire piece there. People will use a lot of different things. Peanut. I use avocado because it's got a really high smoke point. And then I add 1 teaspoon of salt, fine salt, into the oil, not later or something else. When I wash it around, get it all mixed in with the oil and all dissolved into the oil. Then I put 180 grams, not a cup, not 2 cups, not weirdness, 180 grams of the 180 grams of the, what is it, the mushroom popcorn from the Amish, whatever. And now if you use the small, you can go up to some of the other ones from the Amish, you can get up to 220 grams. You get more popcorn, but they're little. But the one that is in my opinion, the one that I buy 6 pounds at a time is the mushroom popcorn from the Amish. The Amish thing. Just search Amish mushroom. If you go to any place, I couldn't figure out why they make so much of it. If you go to any place and get caramel corn, that's what they're using, is this Amish. If you want to think about how to get those really big kernels. Anyway, by that, I don't need to add anything else to it. Like after you do that, I don't add butter. I don't add anything else. Now, occasionally I'll splurge and put a little butter on there and then a little nutritional yeast, which I particularly like. It gives it a little bit of a nutty flavor, but my wife hates it. Go ahead, TJ. Can't hear you, TJ.
Sorry, if you really get into your popcorn, you can buy Amish Country popcorn in 50-pound bags, and it will last you years. Ask me how I know. It'll keep almost indefinitely if you keep it in a cool, dark place.
Yeah. 50 pounds. I thought I was going crazy with 6. Like the Amish, they make a lot of different ones, and so I bought a sampler. So I didn't find the mushroom one by researching anything. I literally bought the samplers, like 10 or 12 different ones, and we went through all of them. And still, we sometimes want to use a different one, but the go-to is the mushroom pop. Anyway, I know it's a Saturday. That's normally a Sunday conversation. It's a Saturday conversation. Anyway, I'm gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna swap over. So if you're an educator, please raise your hand, and Ken will bring you in, and TJ will check your mic. And
do you want to stop the record?
Yeah, and we're gonna please, Ken, go ahead, and we'll say goodbye to our YouTube audience, and see you later. Bye. And you stopped the recording, but you didn't stop YouTube. You got to stop the YouTube. That's the goal. You can stop recording too. It's fine. But the YouTube one is the one